Cool. Well, as we kind of get going, so I hope everybody's had a great week. I'm super psyched for the program today. We're going to switch it up a little bit because Greta's going to share some findings. So as you know, Gretta is one of the, does a lot of research out of Oxford and runs a thing called iWork, kind of on the future of work, and has done some really significant reports. Maybe she'll, it looks like she's still connecting. Maybe she'll share some of the her earlier reports. I think she did a report in 2018 that was really significant. I really enjoyed it. Greta, we're talking about you. It looks like you're on now. And so I got a chance to spend some time with Greta a couple days ago, and she went through some of the research. She's been doing some analysis of what we've been doing on these calls, where the momentum is, and I got so excited. I wanted her to share some of her findings. And so, so I thought to kick off things today, Greta was going to share some findings because she's got a limited time today. She's got to go in like a half an hour. So anyway, Greta, you want to take it away?
Sure. Hey, thanks so much for the intro. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Let me quickly share my screen. Oh, I cannot share my screen here. That's a pity. I prepared some slides for you guys. Let me then share the slides.
One moment, it's coming. And feel free to take as long as you need, Greta.
Okay, I've got a
It should be working now.
Okay, let me see if, yeah. Here, share this one. Okay, Liu Chen is in the call and she will share the link to the slide deck, but I quickly wanted to give you an overview of the scoping study that we're carrying out on what you guys call the open talent economy. And let me see if I can put this in presenter mode, which might be a little bit easier to see. Just say when you don't see things well. So a quick introduction to the research team. We're both on the call today. My name is Gretta Corporaal, or in Dutch, Gretta Corporaal, which nobody can say, so please call me Gretta. I'm a research fellow at the Saïd Business School here at Oxford. Previous 4 years I was at the Oxford Internet Institute, and as a sociologist, I study, how technology is transforming work and how organizations are adapting, and especially looking at platforms. And this is my very talented research assistant, Liu Chen Pang, who's helping me with the research. And she is currently pursuing her PhD at Warwick Business School with some friends of mine who are working there. And I've got a funding for a 3-year project, which I call the Oxford iWork project. That's kind of the name under which all the activities take place. And here's just a quick overview of some of the questions that we're looking at, really trying to understand, the social and organizational implications when firms and workers adopt these platform-based remote working models. And also, like what ideas do platform companies themselves have about the future of work? And that's where we, yes,
Greta,
go ahead.
Sorry, your slides aren't advancing, so you're still on slide 1.
Oh, shoot. Okay. So let me see.
There you go. Could you just maybe go over slide 5 again?
Yes, I will do that. I will just leave it in the amateur mode.
No, that's cool.
So here you have access to the slide deck later if you would like to look back at it. But we're basically, I'm so thankful for John for introducing us to you guys, to your community, because, you guys are really shaping work here. You're doing some really amazing collective thought work here. And that's what we would love to capture and, write a little report about, which we call like a scoping study, particularly looking, like what's the response of platforms to COVID and how do you anticipate the future of work? So what we did so far, and here's, some nice word clouds of some of the meetings that you guys been having, is looking at, what have you been talking about so far? What are the key themes and topics? And John, I haven't included the other slide where we did like the nice machine learning models on the transcripts, but we kind of isolated, you know, what were the key topics that you talked about per meeting, and really looking at, you know, how is the conversation evolving over time. And what we would love to do in phase 2, let me see, you know, here's the time frame of the scoping study and the objectives. Let me quickly talk about that first. You know, really trying to identify and map, you know, the different types of platforms and intermediary organizations that are part of what we call this open talent ecosystem, and capture, you know, how you guys think about the future of work and are collectively trying to shape it. And John and I had a very nice conversation about, you know, what is the actual label this falls under, and we kind of agreed on the label of work transformation there. And going to the deliverables, you know, what we hope to provide to you guys is, you know, a detailed mapping of the community, you know, the positioning, where everybody is positioned in the ecosystem, so you kind of have a map or a landscape where you see where everybody is positioned, and an analysis of, you know, the views you have on the future of work. And, you know, what's in it for us as academics is we're thinking about writing a follow-up report from the 2017 that John so kindly shared with you guys a few weeks ago, as well as seeing, you know, maybe there's something that we can turn into an academic paper, or maybe an HPR paper or something. Yes, this is where I wanted to get to in terms of the time frame. We're really looking at, you know, phase 2 at this moment, looking into the next 2 months, and we would love to also talk with a few of you to do some interviews. And I've set like a nice infrastructure using Calendly, where you could you could set up a meeting with us with a Zoom link, and all that is automated. So it can all be at the time that would fit with your agendas. And we're currently preparing, like, you know, the interview questions that we have for you guys. And now probably you are asking, like, you know, like, now, am I now suddenly included in a study? So let me quickly talk a bit about ethics, because that's, as academics, we have to be very rigorous there. And, you know, details on the research. We made a nice information sheet for you to read. We received ethics clearance from the university that drilled us on all the ethics of how to pursue the research. We follow the code of ethics of the Academy of Management, or academic community. And you decide, you know, if you want to take part in the research, you decide how we will use the data that you provide us. And if you don't want to participate, that's completely fine. I also prepared like a Google form where you can opt out if you don't want to take part. So all those links will come your way. We will share some information in the chat today, so you can just at your leisure after the meeting have a look at it. And if you have any questions for us, I think we have like about 5 to 7 minutes now, but otherwise, if you send us an email at iworkoxford@gmail.com, we will come back to you promptly. So over to you, John. Thank you.
That's really, really great. No, thanks so much. You know, one of the things that I would love for you to talk about a little bit, Greta, with this.
Yes, please.
What's that?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. One of the things I thought was super interesting was that the bar charts that you showed me on the diversity of conversation, and just the kind of, as we have more conversation, we're getting like tighter on subject. Do you have those two slides to show people?
Let me quickly see if I can pull that up.
Okay,
one moment.
That'd be great. Just so, I know some people joined a little late, so essentially that Gretta Corporaal from Oxford has been doing some studying on our conversations, and really understanding, applying machine learning to all the conversations, and understanding the conversations that we've been having, and how quickly we've come to consensus, and, you know, all those kinds of things, word clouds. And so, you know, she's got an open invite to anybody who wants to participate in that, and we'd really love it. I think it was just an amazing opportunity for us to not only, I mean, I think one thing that's so interesting for me as a former researcher and brand strategist is that so many times, you know, it's a bit of archaeology, right? You kind of something happens and you go back and kind of study what happened. This is kind of like research in the midst of our conversation, so we can actually make it a guiding principle, understand the data and see where we're going as we're going down the path, which to me is super exciting. And really, I'm so grateful for Gretta to taking the initiative and getting this going. Were you able to find those 2 slides?
Yes, I have it here.
Great.
Okay, let me quickly go to them. Please start shouting if you don't see this, but this, this is very preliminary and just exploratory, but, we used like the YouTube video recordings that were made of previous meetings and looked at their length. And here you see like a slide where you see, the number of unique words. And bear with me, this one is pretty chronological, but I couldn't align it fully in Python, as I just learned Python over the weekend. But you see, like when you started off having the meetings in April, there were a lot of unique words. Like you haven't figured out a shared language yet to talk about the phenomenon that you were all talking about. When you look at the lowest bar chart, that's the one of the August meeting, you see, there's actually a shared language emerging. That's what is emerging through being part of these conversations, that you find some common ground, as we call it as a sociologist. And also we looked at, the speed of the conversation. And again, this is not completely lined up. But here, here we have like the April one in the bottom and the August one. And what you see is once you have figured out a shared language and have established some common ground, the speed of the conversation is also going much faster. And you've really found some topics to talk about. I also found the other one where we did some machine learning modeling on, the different themes. Let me see if that is actually, yeah, here it is. Where we looked at, where did you guys talk about? What are the words associated that, the LDA modeling is pulling out, and in which meetings were those central? So this is like very basic stuff. It's the beginning of the analysis, but it gives you some idea, like, it's really pointing out what are the topics that you have focused on and how is the conversation evolving over time. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Gretta, it'd be great for you to check out the chat, because I think Karin and Steve have some really great comments on questions on, does this include the chat? And if not, that would be kind of interesting to understand. And then also, the idea of kind of giving more people assignments and kind of refining that, what effect has that had on their language too? So, but man, I'm super excited for this. I'm sorry, Gretta.
Yeah, those are good points. We didn't include the chats. We have asked for permission to include them as well. And if you guys are okay with that, then we will run an additional modeling of those. Yeah. That's
awesome. Well, I think just understanding how we're talking about what we're, talking about. And hey, Ray, this so reminds me of the conversation we had on the, with the ketamine study that you included me in, because it's the same thing, right? It's like, how do you get to common language in a really diverse group, and how does that change, and what does that mean? So my hope is not only this is really great analysis for our group, but then understanding for forming groups that, what can we learn here about the importance of getting to shared common language and the speed of conversations and all those kind of things could be really helpful for a lot of different things. So thanks, Gretta. That's really, really great. Hey, I thought I'd just take everybody to our favorite part of the meeting and do the breakout now, and then we'll come back and talk a lot more about what else we've got going on. So Catherine, can you facilitate that? Are you there?
Working on it.
Okay, cool. We're missing our expert Brandon. He's on his way back. So
can I, since we've got a sec, John, can I just ask a question of Gretta?
Yeah.
Do you have time? I'm just super interested, and it's funny, I see Kirsten as well. So we both just left a conversation where we're talking about a notion of community and measuring community from a brand lens, at least.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was wondering, as I was in that conversation, for me, community, like the core currency of real community is cooperation. And I saw in your work, at least the beginnings of a sense of cooperation when you start talking about common language. And I know that there's lots of variables and we don't know whether we've got a common language yet, but at the very least, the insight of common language suggests a level of community, which suggests, a level of cooperation, which for me suggests a level of community. I think is super interesting. And I'd just love to get your thought on that, or if that's actually a part of your, of where you're looking. I know you're right at the beginning.
That's an awesome question.
It's definitely something that comes out of the analysis as we started doing it. I would say, you know, like when you think about organizations as a verb, as organizing, it doesn't necessarily only happen within the boundaries of a firm. And what you see, you know, as a community here, where each one of you is embedded in their own context, through these weekly meetings, you do develop a sense of, you know, shared interests. You develop a sense of a shared agenda that you would like to pursue. Clearly, you're getting some inspiration from the conversations that are happening every Thursday, and you feel like some work has to happen that cannot be done by one of the players alone. You need to collectively unite to come to some sense of understanding of, you know, especially regarding the demand side, you know, how companies interface with platforms, how to set it up. That's a collective interest that everyone is having. And I think that's like an overall agenda topic where you really have to, you know, unite your efforts to get some structure there, get some, standards and, you know, principles in place in order to smooth things out for everyone, so everyone benefits. So definitely, you know, there is community, there's organizing happening, and you know, you might see yourself as an organization, but to me that doesn't really matter. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, what a great notion. Does anybody have any other questions for Gretta before we go to breakout? Love this discussion. None? Okay, we'll make sure you hit her up on the chat, or we'll make sure that, you know, I think everybody's got her email too, or LinkedIn. So just make sure you communicate, and really looking forward to this journey on the research. Thanks, Gretta.
You're welcome.
So Catherine, are you ready? Oh, here we go. Breakouts. Okay, see you guys on the other side. Hey guys.
You didn't come across as terrified.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Hey, Kirsten, I owe you an email. Sorry about that. I got swept away.
Not a problem.
We'll catch up later this week for sure.
John, you can't put
sounds good.
4 of us in a room and then shrink the amount of time. My therapy needs more.
Yeah, I know, right? It's awesome. It's so good. So I love this whole thing. So thanks so much. Yeah, really, really fun. Hey, I was on with Alex Symbology, and one of the things that came up, and Catherine, let's make sure, can we put a link into Mike Tushman's the HBS case study we're going to do next week? So,
yeah, and John, if there's a way to figure out to send it to them without needing to pay, I think that would be better.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Mike has a link, if Mike has a PDF that he can share, or I mean, we both have a copy. I'm totally fine sharing it. It's HBS's ask.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I'll make sure that we do that, and I'll get with Mike. I think one of his assistants have given us a link, so we'll make sure if it doesn't go out in the chat, Catherine, let's just make sure we get that. But it's really important that we, you know, read that beforehand, because biology is going to be put on the spot, and if you really want to be able to put biology on the spot, then you need to read the case study and call them out in super specific things like, in that conversation, why didn't you say this, biology?
I was too busy buying shoes, probably.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. You're distracted by Grailed or Poshmark. So awesome. Well,
do we know if there'll be a cold call?
If somebody else, if you know anybody else who wants to be a part of that you know, class next week, it's going to happen on August 27th, next Thursday. So regular time. And then
John,
yeah.
We've pasted a link to a Google spreadsheet in the chat, because you need to put your name and your email address, and HBS will be sending everyone a copy of the case study.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Cool. And thanks again for the really good input last week on the global summit. You know, we're still contemplating having it in October. Balaji, you and I need to get together and just kind of strategically, you know, figure that out a little bit more with all the input, and then we'll get back to the group on exactly how it's going to happen, how it's going to roll out. So that's what's happening there. And then just an update on things. So on the organizational structure, I got some preliminary documents, the 501c6 and the 501c3. Haven't had a chance to review those yet. I'd like to schedule kind of the organizational committee, some time with the organizational committee next week. So I'll reach out to everybody on that group. It seems like it's going to be pretty easy to put together. And they've got these working documents, so we'll see. I mean, the big thing, obviously, is coming up with a name. Got to have the name to kind of get things signed up. So, you know, if you get a chance, if you haven't already voted, we threw some things together just to vote on some ideas. Obviously, those aren't the final ideas. I mean, somebody brought up the idea. I put in the voting all the names with council, right, as council for open talent, council for transformation of work, just so I could keep them all the same. Mark brought up a good point that institute might be a better name. So if people have other names besides council or institute, just let's kick those around, and you guys can send me emails. But we'll kind of, that'll be number, you know, the second part of what the name is. So yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the working groups today. I think one of the things that would be really great to do is we get the kind of the governance together, and we're focused on that, is to have the working groups just maybe get a meeting together with themselves next week. Just, I think, you know, this first meeting, there's not a lot of governance for these different committees, but let's just make sure that, you know, people start getting to know each other, start thinking about what are some of the bigger objectives we want to try to accomplish. And then maybe next week we can have some report backs to the group on, you know, where people think we need to focus our efforts and our energies. So I've got that thing open right now, and let me just read, you know, down the list of folks that are in each of these that have signed up. If you haven't signed up yet, go to the doc. We'll put a link in the chat. But certainly, let's just go through this, and then you guys can decide who wants to be the kind of the lead on the organization, or for next week's meeting. So I've got credentialing platforms work stream, and it's Tom Cook, Brian Pena, Jason Puzel, Arturo Natali, Stephanie Fells, and Alex Wendt. I talked to Brian about this one already, so I don't know if Brian's on today. Brian, are you on? No biggie. I'm talking to Brian tomorrow, so I'll make sure that he gets on that one, and we'll be on that. And then the maturity model work stream, I've got Balaji, Alp, John Healy, Stephanie Fells, and David Swift. Who wants to take that and put that, you know, make sure that happens?
I can take it, John.
Okay, cool. That sounds great, Balaji. Thanks. Okay, I'm just gonna put a mark beside your name here so I don't forget. Okay, and then we have enterprise education and certification work streams. This is awesome. This has got a lot of folks on it. So Brian Pena, Chuck Hamilton, Mark Hanot, Jeff Davis, Paul Estes, Roland Rosevier, Jason Puzel, Chris Stanton, Alex Wente, and Shobhana Gupta. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. Hey, Jeff Davis, is this something could you lead this?
I am unmuted. Okay. Ordinarily, I would say yes for next week, but we're looking at a potential hurricane here.
Oh yeah, let's not have you do that. Yeah, you focus on the hurricane. Anybody else who wants to volunteer? Chuck, you want to take it, or who else? Anybody?
Well, if there's no other takers, there's Mark.
Mark, okay, great. Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate it. That'd be awesome. Okay, on the playbook, we've got a lot of folks on the playbook as well. Got Mary Molino, JC Pinheiro, Brian Pena, Don Healy, Alp, Tom O'Malley, Dale Pierce, Gavin, Sheila Mahoney, Chris Stanton, Shobhana Gupta, Don Van Rosen, and David Swift. Who wants to take this one? This is kind of thinking about a playbook. Anybody? Mary, do you want to, since you're first on the list, you want to take that? Oh, you're on mute.
That's why you can hear me talking. I can take the first baton. I'll take the first relay.
That sounds good.
First look at the relay.
All right.
Be there to back you up, Mary.
I want to be very involved. I'm only hesitant because I got to line up a few things.
Yeah, I totally get it. I think the reality of this first call should be just getting to know people, right? Like, let's just, my recommendation would be a Zoom call, kind of like maybe have a little agenda on, you know, what are your concerns? What are your thoughts? Just a kind of a collective. I mean, since we don't have any kind of governance, we're not trying to push to anything right away. It's more trying to create that good conversation and an alignment, right? So it's more of a chat than anything else. So
absolutely.
Thanks. Okay, on the governance work stream, I'm on that. So let me just lead that. I'll make sure that Diane and Rich Copsey and Karin and Dale and Freddie and Sheila, I'll make sure we arrange something for next week. Anybody else who wants to join on that. Marketing communications work stream, got Andy Barnes, Lisa Nelson, Paul Estes, Stacy Justin, Marcella, Magalas, sorry, Marcelo, Cindy Sangay, Ashley Boyden, and one more, Matt Neal. Okay, who wants to be in charge of the marketing communications work stream for the first meeting?
I'll take the first baton.
Okay, Ashley, that'd be awesome. Thanks for doing that. And then what I'll do is I'll make sure, the other thing we'll do is we'll make sure to the folks that have kind of volunteered for this first one to get you everybody's email. So it'll be really easy for you guys to do it. So, and then development funding work stream. We have a couple of people, Sheila and Stephanie have signed up. Anybody else who wants to sign up for that? I mean, obviously that's going to be a really critical part of how do we fund all our efforts. So anybody who wants to sign up on that, I'll definitely be a part of that myself as well. But, you know, Stephanie or Sheila, do you want to lead that?
I certainly could. I was thinking about leading one of the next ones coming up, but I can certainly do both. That's completely fine, at least for the first round.
Okay, yeah, let's just do it for the first round. Then we can, as we get more organized, we'll figure it out. Awesome. Okay, that sounds good. I think that's, let's see, I think that's it from work streams. I mean, let's see, business model work stream and alignment, like identify. So there's a business model work stream that got put in. And this one is, let's see, it's Antonio, Alistair, Siren, and San. Anybody want to take that one?
Yes, John, that's Antonio Kies. I took the liberty to create this work stream to help us to address some of the questions that came up last week in terms of segmentation, value proposition. So I think the business model is going to lead us to addressing those questions, and I can take the lead on this.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Antonio. Really, really appreciate that. That's awesome. All right, that sounds good. Well, you know what I'll do is I think there's two objectives here. I'll make sure that we get the emails to the leaders, but then I'll put out an email follow-up to this meeting and just make sure that we get one last invite to anybody who wants to drop in and be a part of the committee, and then make sure that you guys get the email. So, so yeah, I think we're off to a good start, and thanks for the participation. Really, really stoked. I think there's lots of stuff to figure out. And those folks that have volunteered to kind of lead it, make sure you shoot a note to me if you have any questions or any thoughts on how we might, you know, what we might do and how we might structure things. And then I think what I'll do is next time we'll just have some time in the program for people to report back on what they talked about and how things are going. Let's see.
Hey there.
Catherine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
go
have a
for it.
quick question, if I may. I suggested just a few minutes, I threw out a suggestion for another work stream that I hadn't seen really, unless that work is being done in one of the groups, is for policy research and influence.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea.
Yeah, I think, you know, identifying all the policies, the key drivers of influence, people, identities, or entities, along with the fundraising for the foundations that are for the fundraising, I think policy research might be one we want to look into.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Stephanie. Let's see how that develops. I mean, you're the one that signed up for it, but let's see how, if some other folks sign up for it, and you know,
Sure.
want to make sure it's a community effort. So if a bunch of people sign up, we'll get that work stream going for next week too. But if not, we can certainly drop it in. And I think what'll happen, right, is these work streams, to me, what's going to happen, I think there's a lot of similarities. You know, so for like the maturity model and the playbook seem like both great work streams, but I wonder, you know, is the maturity model built into the playbook? And so those are, it's not going to be, we want to make this super efficient. We don't want to create too many committees and too much work for people, and make it really, really easy to kind of drive the most value and the most momentum to overcome the adoption issues. All right, so that's kind of the update on the work streams. Really, really appreciate that. I'm going to send, let's see, on the naming, I think I already said that, but Catherine's going to put the naming worksheet. I think we got like 27 people to lean into the voting. It's just SurveyMonkey voting, so make sure that you do that. I haven't done much with the manifesto, in that that was kind of written in the context of you know, using the term new work, but, you know, I wanted to see what we came up with on a name, and then we could kind of do some wordsmithing on the manifesto. The other thing I want to really have it emerge, and I haven't done much with it, it's still kind of very raw form in the manifesto form, is the whole metrics, like what would it mean to be successful for our group? And I think that should really, you know, we should actually maybe make that a topic for each of the work streams next week. Right? Is like, what, you know, in my work stream or our work stream, what does success mean? And then we can aggregate those and really start thinking about, but I want kind of our goals to be emergent from the group instead of kind of mandated up front with less information. So if we can really create that momentum together and come up with something that we're totally aligned on. So yeah, so that's the manifesto. Any questions?
And John, when you say next week, are you, because next week, I think probably Mike will take a full hour, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I forgot that. So let's do that in 2 weeks. Let's make that the subject. We'll have the first report backs in 2 weeks, because it'll take more time, and Mike will want the full hour. We'll have some updates on, you know, some things like organizational structure, and maybe some news and things like that people can share. But I think the case study does take that much time. So thanks, Balaji. That's a really good point. So yeah, I'd love to open it up to the floor right now and just kind of get some feedback from folks. I thought, you know, just some comments so far. You know, me being a brand and you know, and strategy guy for a long time, I love that idea, you know, of trying to quantify community, and especially in the context of kind of co-creation. Like, do brands, that's always a question I've had, you know, do brands that like co-create with their customers, do they have more inherent brand value because their community is much, much stronger? And that's always a supposition I've had, but I just wonder, and I wonder in the context of this group, like, you know, the more alignment we have, the more community we build, the more momentum it causes. I don't know if anybody has access to any of that kind of research, but it certainly would be interesting to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think two things, right? One is, does that momentum necessarily create enterprise value? And there's like an obvious political brand that was in our the discussion we were having sort of came high on that initial index, and the methodology is very, very basic right now. But so that was interesting, and I think the second part is you know, from a marketing lens, I think it's all too easy for us to miscalculate community. Because we use like typical marketing measurements. And that's where I was super interested in Gretta's approach, because it felt much more human, and it just felt much more like there was something there that, you know, this notion of common languages stuff just felt like it was much more vibrant than a sort of typical marketing sense of what community means.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think, you know, to me, I was talking about this on a podcast that I was interviewed for the other day. And who's read Eric von Hippel's Democratization of Innovation? Has anybody read that? So it's an awesome book. He actually wrote it in 1989. So way before any of us were talking about this stuff. And so, and one of the case studies he uses some medical equipment, but he uses windsurfers as an example, right? That all the windsurfing came from actually the co-creation with customers, that users, that athletes were actually out there improving things. So it's a really good book for co-creation, I think, for you guys to check out. But, you know, just from a context, I've always been intrigued because I was on the board of directors of Black Diamond Equipment, and, you know, for 15 years, and Black Diamond became the kind of preeminent climbing equipment company. But I remember early days, one of the things I loved, and one of the things I love about this group, and, you know, the stuff that I experienced with Ray and the group that he's running or a part of, is that, you know, what we would do, we were based in Salt Lake City. We would actually, during the week, we would build climbing equipment, and then all of us would run out and break it all weekend long with our friends, right? And we come back in and we re-engineer it, and then we break it again. And what happened was the innovation cycles became super, super fast because there was so much community and so much connection, not just from the internal folks, but also from those kind of lead users that were out there willing to kind of take the risk to break the equipment and learn. And my hope is that's what happens here, right? That we start being able to share stories and figure out what's broken and try new things out in the marketplace and come back to this group and say, well, that really worked and that didn't. And here's what seems to be getting some momentum. So that's certainly a hope. And I hope, San, when you guys do that research and figure that out, you'll share with the group some of the principles you find, because I think it's super important for us to keep those things top of mind.
And I think a couple of case studies that are very important, and at least there's been some numbers that have been done. So one example is Beta Brand.
Yeah.
The crowdfunding, crowdsourcing company where if the role of the community, if as a community you comment and participate in helping build something, it increases the propensity for purchase. Going back to corporate value or enterprise value, I think a lot of companies, you know, I totally agree with you, kind of measure with the volume of comments and volume of participation, versus they measure it as at least their measurement was, would the participation in terms of providing design input or feedback, does that convert into propensity to purchase? And they actually proved that, or at least they did prove at that point in time that it did. And again, there's tons of these communities like right now. I think the Instapot community is a huge example or case study of how that Instapot does not do any marketing, but it's basically the Facebook groups that basically help each other to ensure that people are not messing up. And when you mess up your chicken biryani, then the Instapot is not wrong. It's the way your cooking is wrong. So that you get help from the community to fix it. And that really encourages enterprise value of more people buying that stuff because it minimizes mistakes. And I think there's a lot of new concepts around monetizing community that are coming up right now. And you know, there's a few other companies that are basically converting users into customer service agents, because a lot of times when something's broken in your technology, you don't call the company, you go look for it online, or you ask your friends. So they basically said, how do you convert these avid users into customer service agents so that they can continue to support the thing that they're passionate about, but also make some money in the process. So there's a lot of interesting things that are happening in the community and monetization space.
Yeah, I really love that, Balaji. And I think the way that, you know, in the context of that story, what applies to us is the thing that comes back when, you know, to me, it comes to mind when you say that and talk about that, is that, you know, what Sheila said, right, in the life sciences space, is that 80% of the folks, the freelancers, are not on a platform, and only 20% are. And so, you know, to me, part of the growth of our industry and the community is how do we make, you know, the value proposition for platforms so enticing that you're not going to be a freelancer without working with a platform, right? It helps you so much as an independent worker, consultant, whatever you do independently, so that those flip. So instead of 20% of folks on platforms, there's really 80% of folks on platform, and there's a lot of value, perceived value from, and real value driven by the platforms themselves for the workforce. Certainly, I think that will help with adoption as well, right? So. Any thoughts, Steve, John?
Quickly on that one, it's David.
Oh, David.
I
Yeah,
spoke
great.
to a UK-based platform, remain nameless, but they claim to have 20,000 freelancers on board. And when I asked them how many people of the 20,000 are actually actively getting work and are using the platform and getting that work, he said there's about 1,200. So that gives you an idea. I said, so you've got 1,200 people that you trust and that your customers trust and that are willing to work, and you've got, you know, 18,800 people that are just, you know, marketing material, really. So people have huge numbers, but the actual number of people that work and can make a living out of it is much smaller. So if you want people to use marketplaces, you've got to be able to provide them work, and they've got to be able to make a living. Otherwise, it's just signing up to something and it's of little use.
Yeah, I wonder. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was just going to add, I agree in the long term as people shift to full-time freelance, that's got to happen. But I think that when we say it's all, communities are all about that right now, I think we're missing out on some of the passion work and the learning and the connectivities that's going on. I think transitioning that to where we're leveraging those platforms to also provide full-time staffing is really important. But I think the platforms that invest in the people and can actually show them to be a home where not only they can find work, but they can develop and find the latest and greatest skills, where they can connect with people, where they can start to build trust. All of those things, I think, are also part of the equation. And so that's that whole passion economy thing that we're seeing at Top Coder and a few other places where they're kind of turning that back on itself, I think is an important component.
Steve, I'll back you up on that, in that the research we've got is that you have kind of a hidden population of people who are working in this marketplace because it's a contingency play on their part. I don't trust my employer right now. I'm going to figure my own way out, but I can't afford to quit right now. So I'm going to start pursuing my passion, and I'm going to get it to a point where I can let go of the full time. And that's an audience that's going to be hesitant to declare their position in the marketplace because they don't want to be found out in some ways.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point. I mean, Steve, you've been such a great advocate of education and learning. I wonder, as David, your great comments as well. I wonder if there's a way to think about, like, how do we create kind of this roadmap of, like what platforms could do from obviously work on one end, but like learning on the other. Like what's the taxonomy of the journey that could attract people? If you're interested in some kind of work, is there a way to take some simple classes, or at least connect to some classes through a platform, so that you're kind of creating the momentum that you might not want to work right now, but you just are intrigued by the skill. You want to watch some videos on what this is and how it works, with the opportunity to kind of upskill yourself.
Yeah, I mean, Beverly and Gavin and I have been having offline conversations about this exact thing, right? Because we're starting to see, I mean, the whole movement behind this is that things are changing so rapidly that the traditional model breaks. And the core of that is that people have to have better ways to learn faster, so that they can grab these opportunities. And I was looking at that platform Humu that came out of Google. It kind of nudges managers to kind of better use their folks using machine learning. It's amazing. Platforms that could start using that kind of AI to help people nudge into and explore different opportunities in education. The stuff, again, that Burdick put together, Paro, where education comes with task assignments. Ways to find the little wins. I don't know if anyone noticed, but Google, like this week, announced this whole like certification system where you can go get a $90,000 a year job with a 6-month training. These things are changing the way education works. And I think the platforms that figure out how to pull that into why you should be part of their platform, that we're not just going to find you work, we're going to help you find the next level of work continually, right? And we're going to keep doing that over and over. I think that's where kind of the secret sauce might lie.
I love that. I think that's really cool. Somebody connected me to a big learning platform, and I can't remember the name of it, but I'll shoot it to you guys. It was super interesting, but it was really disconnected from work, right? And so like you go through the catalog and it's almost, you have your mindset on, oh, I want to learn something, but it's not like, it seems to me that learning happens interstitially, like interstitials between work, right? If you've got work problem and you're kind of stuck, how can you use that? My latest example is that and those of you guys follow me on Instagram, I bought a new Sprinter van. And so I decided this is my 4th van. I was going to build it out myself. But I didn't have the guts to actually do it myself. So I actually Adventure Wagon puts together a kit, and it's not the kit that's really cool. It's the videos. I just did the wiring harness and I cut a hole in the roof for the fan last night. I never would have done that. I have no mechanical skills at all. But when you're sitting there with your YouTube video and say, okay, now put your, jigsaw in the top of your roof. It was such a great learning experience. But I think the learning, to me, learning has to happen with work or with doing, right? Like I would never watch those videos about how to build out a van if I wasn't sitting there with my tools in my hand.
Well, and there's such a, like, if you look at the disconnect between a 4 to 5 year degree that costs, hundreds of thousands of dollars and a YouTube video, they're not the same thing, but they really demonstrate the disparity of delivery mechanisms. And I think you start to look at the stuff going on in the crowds, you can see how it starts to weave into real stuff.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Any other thoughts?
John, I think somebody put it in one of the comments, but LinkedIn Learning and Coursera, maybe Coursera is the one you were thinking about. In Novartis, we rolled out both of those. So we got rid of classroom-based training. And we said it's 24/7, it's in your pocket, on your iPhone. You have access to, 15-minute bite-size things or 3 hours or, 3 days, whatever. But we moved away from flying people around the world to expensive locations, sit them in a classroom for 3 days. And I think a lot of corporates now are starting to do that. So the learning has become a lot more, a lot less academic, a lot more practical, I think.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I think that's a great example. I think there's a lot more to be done there for sure, especially for platforms that are based on, connecting people to work. Like if they can connect people to educational experience that they're connected to work is really great.
Yeah. One thing that I do want to, I think, caution all of us is, I think, while the social media companies that are making billions of dollars doing this, John, the guy who made the video for you to cut whatever you did in your could be broke. They might not have any money because, they shared their knowledge, but they didn't monetize any of that. I think as we think about the next generation of these models, we have to ensure that people get paid for sharing that knowledge. Whereas, we've created this share and kumbaya, but, when people have no jobs, they might be doing that on their side to share their passion. But when we have this high unemployment, that knowledge that there has to be an easier way to say thank you to that person who made that video, or to send a $5 donation to them because they probably saved, a shit ton of time for you, right? And your time is valuable. There has to be a deeper connection.
So I agree and disagree at the same time, because I get to disagree with you once in a while. That's a new one. It's normally the other way around. I think that there is room for kind of charity. Like Wikipedia is a great example, right? Where if money's not the important thing to you, then putting something out there that's a contribution you make. Now, I agree we need to protect people that need to make a living, and we need to find a way to get that. But I don't think that those things are always the same. I do think there's a contributory benefit that a lot of time crowd members want to make, that maybe they have a full-time, maybe they have their expenses covered. So, I mean, I just want to be careful there, because I think there's a richness to this tapestry that you get with crowds that is.
I totally agree with you. I'm not saying nobody needs to get paid, but I'm saying when somebody needs the money, there's no avenue for them to get paid right now because of the way the construct is structured.
I mean, if you just for some context, so Balaji on the van, I think one of the things I was really psyched with Adventure Van, what they did is, they make all their like how-to videos free, right? So, but yet you have to do it with their kit and their wiring harness, and to do their basic kit is $16,000. So, it's definitely, they're making a lot of money, I think, because they're just pre-cutting stuff in the factory and having you install it. But from my perspective, that was the number one thing, the reason I bought it from them, because I felt like they had it dialed from an educational standpoint, right? They helped me do my job better, and I'm willing to pay them premium to them for that ability to make it easier for me to install it myself. So I think that there have to be new ways of combining, the educational piece with the monetization piece, and being able to kind of do things in new ways. So, oh man, always like such a great discussion. Anybody have anything? We've got, a minute left. these times go so fast.
I just want to know how nervous you were before you drilled that hole, in your roof.
Yeah, I was actually, you know what happened? I actually hired an old climbing buddy of mine, Paul Sibley, who's like a, master woodworker. And I was kind of underneath getting some stuff ready. He was on the roof cutting, and all of a sudden I heard a oops. And I got up there, and he actually had moved off the line by about an inch with his jigsaw, because he just spaced out, and I was freaked out for a second. But fortunately, the way that we built it out, it's okay. Definitely nervous. So
I hope you videoed yourselves doing that action, because that'll then get lots of hits on YouTube. There'll be a new
exactly right. Exactly. Yeah, I didn't do a video, but I took some pictures. I'll send some pictures. I'll send a picture out for you guys to check it out. So
maybe you could share with Mercedes.
What's that?
Guys, no, I was just.
You could share with Mercedes.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Dave. Go ahead.
I was saying maybe you could share the video with Mercedes, give them some ideas for product development.
Exactly. Yeah. Me being the master mechanic. Marcelo, go ahead.
No, I was about to say that there's this interesting seminar about to start on Stanford Online. I sent the link. It's around building company culture from startup to scale up. I think this is a very intertwined subject to everything we've been discussing. How to build a company culture when you are reaching out to freelancers and independent talents. I think this is a huge challenge for us. So I thought it was worth sharing this link with you. And special bonus, the seminar is for free, and it's Stanford Online. So have a go if you have a spare hour right after our meeting here.
Great. That sounds good. Awesome. Well, good. Anybody have any last thoughts before we go? No. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Have a great week. As always, really awesome. Enjoy.
Thank you.